The Galactic Empire, a vast and unyielding force, had long been a terror to countless species across the galaxy. Its cruelty was unmatched, its power undeniable. The Empire operated on the premise that only the strongest could survive, and all others were either subjugated or eliminated. This truth had been proven time and again with the Empire's brutal campaigns and merciless invasions. However, nothing displayed the true depth of its heartlessness quite like the public execution of 70,000 humans. The humans had been chosen for this spectacle not because they had fought back or posed a serious threat, but because they represented an ideal, humanity's defiance. The Empire's leaders had deemed them expendable, a mere lesson to remind the galaxy of its power. And so, on a day that would be remembered for generations, the execution was broadcast live across the galaxy. The broadcast was not meant to elicit sympathy. It was a demonstration of the Empire's control, an effort to crush the will of any who might challenge their dominion. For many, this broadcast was a defining moment. The 70,000 were ordinary people, farmers, traders, workers, the everyday citizens of Earth. They had not been warriors, they were not rebels. Their sole crime was being human. The Emperor's voice echoed through the broadcast, chillingly cold, as he justified the mass murder with empty rhetoric about the Empire's right to rule. These 70,000 lives would be snuffed out to set an example. The message was clear, resistance was futile, and anyone who opposed the Empire would meet the same fate. The citizens of Earth watched in horror as the numbers flashed across the screen. The Empire had already wiped out millions of innocent lives in other systems, but this was different. This was their own people, their own families, and this time, the execution wasn't in some distant star system, it was being broadcast directly to their homes. The weight of this action was not lost on them. The Empire's ruthlessness was on full display, and in that moment, it was clear that no one was safe. Not even humanity, which had once been regarded as a nascent and insignificant species in the grand scheme of the galaxy. While fear and disbelief swept through the population, one thing was unmistakable: the human spirit was not so easily extinguished. The Empire had made a grave miscalculation. In their arrogance, they had underestimated humanity's capacity for defiance. The death of 70,000 people was not going to break their resolve. It would only fuel the fire of rebellion. The broadcast concluded, but the message it carried reverberated across Earth and beyond. The universe watched as the Empire made a show of power. But it also set the stage for something much larger. The Empire had thought that the death of these humans would serve as a final warning. But instead, it would be the spark that ignited a war. A war fought not with superior technology or overwhelming force, but with the one thing the Empire could never account for: humanity's unyielding determination to fight for survival, no matter the odds. The moment the broadcast ended, Earth was left in shock, but that shock quickly morphed into a unified call for action. Despite humanity's previous fear of the Galactic Empire, there was a fierce sense of solidarity that began to surge through Earth's governments and citizens alike. No one could ignore the brutal execution, and no one could pretend that the galaxy's most powerful empire would leave them untouched forever. The outrage was immediate and overwhelming, and it wasn't just a momentary reaction. It was a deep, visceral understanding that humanity could not afford to remain passive any longer. The first move came from the United Nations, which immediately convened to discuss the appropriate response. Military leaders, diplomats, and strategists from every corner of the world were brought together, not just to mourn the loss of the 70,000, but to devise a strategy. The loss had ignited something in Earth's leaders that had been dormant for far too long, a realization that humanity could not simply survive under the Empire's heel. They had to fight back. To do nothing would mean total extinction. In that moment, the entire planet was united in a single, defiant purpose: to retaliate. Among the first to respond were the United States, who swiftly mobilized the U.S. Marines. These elite soldiers, known for their courage and resilience, were called to lead Earth's charge against the Empire. Despite humanity's relative lack of technological superiority compared to the Empire's vast arsenal, the Marines were not deterred. Their reputation was built on unconventional warfare, adaptability, and an unyielding belief in their ability to overcome the impossible. If anything, the Empire's broadcast had sparked an even stronger fire in their hearts. The world needed them, and they were ready to answer that call. The message was clear: humanity would not go quietly into extinction. The U.S. government, supported by others, began preparations for the largest military mobilization Earth had ever seen. But the Marines knew they were not about to fight a conventional war. They were facing an empire that could decimate entire planets with ease. The plan was not to challenge the Empire's might head-on, but to focus on what humans did best: adapt, outthink, and strike when least expected. They would target the Empire's communication lines, their infrastructure, and their supply chains, hitting where it hurt the most. The battle would be fought not just with weapons, but with wit, grit, and determination. The scale of the operation grew exponentially as other nations rallied to Earth's cause. Despite having no direct experience with intergalactic warfare, humanity's leaders were quick to gather intelligence. They sought out experts in technology, engineering, and guerrilla tactics, pooling resources to create a strategy that could level the playing field. Satellites, advanced weaponry, and even civilian networks were repurposed for the task ahead. Humanity was an underdog in this war, but their biggest strength wasn't their technological prowess, it was their sheer willpower. There was no more time for hesitation. Earth's leaders were fully aware of the odds. The Empire's fleet could crush entire continents in minutes, but they also knew the Empire had one critical flaw: its arrogance. The Galactic Empire had failed to recognize humanity's potential for adaptation and resilience. The Marines, the very symbol of Earth's fighting spirit, would lead this charge. Their mission was clear: take the fight directly to the Empire. It was a calculated risk, but if humanity was to survive, they could no longer afford to wait. It was time to make a stand. The U.S. Marines, the pinnacle of Earth's military might, launched their assault against the Galactic Empire with precision and purpose. Unlike the vast, overwhelmingly powerful forces of the Empire, the Marines had no illusions about winning through sheer firepower. Instead, they relied on strategy, stealth, and tactics honed through centuries of human conflict. They knew that against such a technologically superior opponent, every move had to count. This wasn't going to be a battle won on the battlefield alone. It would be fought with cunning, adaptation, and an unrelenting spirit. Their first strike was against the Empire's communication systems. With their advanced hacking tools and intelligence networks, the Marines managed to infiltrate key nodes, crippling the Empire's ability to coordinate their forces across vast distances. The Empire's fleets, once united under a single command, were suddenly scattered, unable to communicate effectively. This chaos created an opening that the Marines seized without hesitation, launching guerrilla-style raids on the Empire's supply lines. These raids weren't just attacks. They were psychological blows, showing the Empire that humans, though weak in comparison, could be unpredictable and dangerous. Every successful strike added to their momentum. The Marines weren't just fighting the Empire's soldiers, they were fighting their perception of humanity. The Empire's arrogance had led them to believe that the humans were nothing more than pawns, incapable of challenging the might of galactic forces. But as the Marines began to dismantle the Empire's infrastructure piece by piece, they realized they had underestimated their enemy. The Marines didn't need advanced weaponry or vast fleets, they needed the element of surprise and the sheer will to persevere. On the ground, the Marines employed tactics that disrupted the Empire's conventional approach to warfare. They used deception, ambushes, and makeshift weapons scavenged from the battlefield to launch attacks that the Empire couldn't predict. They utilized terrain to their advantage, setting traps and sabotaging key installations. These tactics weren't just effective, they were a direct challenge to the Empire's perception of humanity's weakness. The more the Marines fought, the more they demonstrated that humans had an ingenuity that couldn't be ignored. As the Marines pressed forward, they found themselves up against a new reality. The Empire, once dismissive of humanity's capabilities, began to take them seriously. This shift in perception was not due to the Empire's sudden respect for human power, but rather out of sheer fear. The Marines, through their relentless strikes and innovative tactics, were doing what no one expected. They were winning. And with each victory, the Empire's hold on the galaxy seemed a little more fragile. The success of the Marines didn't go unnoticed. As news of their victories spread, resistance movements across the galaxy began to gain traction. The Empire, once thought to be invincible, was suddenly on the defensive. The Marines' ability to strike swiftly and without warning turned the tide in ways the Empire couldn't have prepared for. The human spirit, once written off as insignificant, was now a force to be reckoned with. The Marines had shown that even in the face of impossible odds, humanity could adapt, learn, and overcome. This was just the beginning. Now, the Empire was fighting not just a battle, but a war on multiple fronts, one that they had never anticipated. As the battle continued, the stakes grew higher. The Empire, once confident in its dominance, began to unravel under the relentless attacks from the Marines. With each successful operation, humanity's resolve grew stronger, and the Marines had become the tip of the spear. They knew that to end the Empire's reign, they had to strike at its heart. The final push would not be easy, but the Marines were relentless, driven by the memory of the 70,000 who had perished and the countless others suffering under the Empire's rule. The assault on the Empire's central stronghold was humanity's last, best hope. The Empire had always believed its leadership was untouchable, ensconced in a fortress that no force, not even a combined galaxy of resistance, could breach. But humanity's resourcefulness was their greatest asset, and the Marines had learned to exploit the Empire's overconfidence. They used everything at their disposal, from captured technology to improvised weapons, to launch a series of calculated strikes on the fortress's defenses. The Marines had no illusions of victory without sacrifice, but their willingness to face impossible odds was their greatest weapon. The final assault was a blend of precision and chaos. The Marines used every tactic they had perfected over the past months, distraction, misdirection, and direct combat, to push into the heart of the Empire's command center. They infiltrated the heavily fortified compound, evading detection long enough to plant the charges that would disable the Empire's most powerful weapons. The Empire's leaders, once thought untouchable, now found themselves in a position they never expected, under siege by an enemy they had dismissed as insignificant. The Marines fought with a singular purpose: to end the Empire's reign and send a message to the galaxy. This was not just a battle for Earth's survival, it was a declaration that humanity would no longer cower in fear. With each passing hour, the Empire's grip on the galaxy weakened. The heart of their empire, their most sacred stronghold, was under assault by the very humans they had once dismissed as weak and inconsequential. The reality was sinking in: the Empire had made a fatal miscalculation. The final blow came when the Empire's leaders were forced to surrender. With their fleet in disarray, their power structure crumbling, and their once indomitable forces scattered, the Empire had no choice but to retreat. The Marines' victory was not just a military success, it was a symbol of humanity's resilience, their refusal to be wiped out by an oppressor. The Empire, which had believed it could crush Earth with a mere flick of its hand, now found itself on the run. The humans, against all odds, had won. The aftermath of the battle was nothing short of transformative. The Empire, now fractured and retreating, no longer held the same power it once did. Humanity, once viewed as weak and primitive, was now seen as a beacon of resistance. The Marines' victory had inspired countless other oppressed species across the galaxy to rise up against their oppressors. The tide had turned, and Earth had proven that the spirit of its people could never be broken. The galaxy would never forget the lesson the Empire had learned the hard way. Never underestimate humanity, for even in the darkest of times, they would find a way to fight back and win.